Hello everyone, we are back for another Murderous comic ramble. Today we are going over issue 4, which covers episode 6 of the show, Dead End. As usual, these videos are not a replacement for reading the comic, these are my reviews and rambles on them. If you want to read the comic, you can go buy it at comic shops, Onlypress's website, Neon Ichiban, or anywhere else that sells it. So if that's out of the way, let's begin. We start the issue with a nice looking cover. I've said it before and I will say it again, the cover artist is the person really selling these comics for people. The art looks fantastic and has done so for every issue. We get a page giving us a small recap and leading us into this episode. There's a few small things like Uzi saying N was called Antichrist. He wasn't, that was towards Sin. There's some fourth wall break stuff with N asking if this is confusing, and Uzi saying we're 5 issues in, too late to get off the ride now. Winking smile emoticon. Yeah, that's how I feel making these videos. Moving on to the episode, we start with the intro of a drone hiding from the Sentinels in the Cabin Fever labs. The scene is presented differently. The drone doesn't try to save another before they are killed. The death is sudden, probably in an attempt to save pages. The drone also screams for some reason when they're being killed, despite the whole thing about the Sentinels being they stun their prey to where they can't do anything. They let out a glitchy scream for a second at most. Also, one panel is from the perspective of a security camera, but they also show the security camera in the corner, so it just looks a bit weird. The show also does it, but it cuts 2 different shots. Here in the comic, I do just think it looks a little bit weird, and you don't need to show a security camera for the audience to get the idea they are looking at it from the perspective of a security camera. Meanwhile, outside, everyone is staring at each other. Considering this says meanwhile, that means the intro scene happens at the same time as this, which isn't a horrible thing, and you can say it's the same for the actual episode. I just thought it was interesting they confirmed these 2 happen at the same time, so this drone has been down there for however long. It's strange knowing that there were other drones who survived up until this point in the labs, and it does leave the question of, why is this happening now? Back to the story, the group has an awkward silence and then N calls out Tessa's name as so she runs towards him, picking him up by the head. Happy he remembers her, just like how she greeted him in episode 5. Everyone greets each other and we get some explanation stuff. V's line, classic J, is given to V and N. Uzi's line of being tired about killing this one is slightly changed. Now it says, "Hey Jay, getting real tired of killing you." The hey part makes it weirdly casual, and the you part is making it more direct to Jay. Also, Jay's shirt is white instead of yellow, and that is a constant thing in this issue. Not sure why this mistake is happening now, considering it's been fine in every other appearance. Tessa explains Sin ran away, cutting Jay off as she says boss. We learn Sin's last act was putting the Disassembly drones on this planet, so that's why Jay and Tessa are here to figure out why and stop Sin. Tired of them talking, Dole speaks up and uses the solver to grab the key bug, before running away and jumping into the labs as neutral as ever. After Dole escapes, Tessa and Jay explain more, and Tessa tells Jay to mind the ship. We don't get a reaction from Jay like the show. The most we get here is her saying, and a blank expression on her face. Uzi questions Tessa on what is happening with Dole, so Tessa tells her Dole thinks this is where her parents got a sickness, and she thinks Dole is right. Uzi touches her mother's collar, so the readers can get the idea she is also talking about herself. Also, the frame of Tessa's helmet with Uzi's reflection is not in the comic. I do think it is one of the alternate covers though. Tessa jumps in and we see the group land with Tessa being held by N so she doesn't die from the fall. They look around, N asks if the secret elevator is labelled, and they use the same pose twice. They find a door with some oil and a large scratch. Inside is a lot of dead disassembly drones which disgusts and horrifies Uzi and N. In the show, you can see Uzi's reaction is scared and then immediately looks up at N and reaches out for him. The comic removes this and the 2 aren't even standing side by side. On the wall they are told don't look at the light. The other drawings and corpses aren't shown, probably 2 save pages, and because you get the idea from just one. As Tessa says the security is against the drones, En and Uzi have a tender moment, almost holding hands, but foul because Tessa shouts about the human security that her, a human, can control. V follows to screw with Sin's plan, and En follows for the mum backstory, trying to involve Uzi, who seems unsure. They find a way to the secret elevator, but as they move forward, Tessa steps in a trap and gets pulled down another hallway. And for some reason, Uzi calls out Tessa's name. 1. The shouting out her name isn't really needed. 2. Wouldn't it make more sense for En to say this? You can just swap it over to the other side since he's also in the panel. The 3 chase after Tessa, but hear laughing so they step back and hide. They peek and see a baby drone giggling. Uzi says to shoot the baby, and En quickly opens fire. But the thing scurries away with bullet dodging skills elite. It escapes, then a disassembly drone arm appears under Uzi and En, as Alice reveals herself behind them, clicking a button, causing what looks like a large explosion. So a few things here. 1. V just disappears and it looks like she's not involved in this moment. 2. This is an EMP. It knocks the drones out and is actually in episode 1 of the show, but the comic removed it in that issue since the fight was reduced. My main thing here is that it looks like an explosion and not just a bright blue light, so I think it can be a little confusing to understand what's going on, as readers could easily mistake this for an explosion. It's not a big problem, but it was something I noticed, and also for some reasons I will talk about with the Sentinels. Uzi wakes up, asking where she is, and finds Alice chopping off a worker drone's head. V is also stuck there, and the two have magnets on their head to weaken them, but the comic doesn't really show it well. I think you can get the idea, but it may look confusing for readers only. Alice is going to chop them up for parts. Uzi warns her cutting open V will result in a creepy worm, but Alice tells her heat keeps them sluggish, and this ain't their first rodeo. Uzi attempts to use a solver, but due to the magnet, it doesn't work. Alice tells Uzi that she's dealt with witches before, including 02, who left them for dead. So first things first, Alice's design. Personally, I actually like it. As you can see, she has red hair along with the front being grey, and her outfit has been changed. Originally in the show it was a test subject gown, but here it's a worker drone coat, like one Khan would wear. However, hers is ripped in the middle. This isn't actually a comic original design. For one, her hair was always red, but due to the lighting of the episode, it's hard to tell. So while a lot of fans know that it is red, a lot of fans have mixed it up with a brown or dark reddish brown. I do think the grey part is new though. Either way, it's interesting to see her hair more red because the comic is brighter and the colours are too. For the outfit, that actually comes from Liam's original design for Alice. You can see in this concept art, instead of a test subject gown, she is wearing the torn in the middle worker drone coat. I think it's interesting they went with this design, and honestly, it's not bad. I do like that we get to see Alice's original design, and see her hair more. I think it's one of the best unique things the comic has done. It doesn't ruin or affect the story, and again, it's interesting to see the original design. Some may say it makes it harder to tell that Alice was a test subject, especially because the picture of her Noreen Yeeva is removed, and they never give her ID card on the antlers detail. But you can argue that because of her dialogue and the situation, readers can get the idea that she was involved in whatever went down here. Another change in this scene is that the worker drone getting its head cut off, in the show it's actually the drone from the intro, however here in the comic it's replaced by a random one. 2. Uzi has talking added. I'm not really a fan of it and I think it's kind of weird. There's also no black screen to separate the two scenes of her being knocked out and then waking up, so here it immediately transitions into the next one. Finally, for some reason the cores are cut off from the full page. It would have been better to show them as they are the subject of the moment, and because we haven't seen them since issue 2, and that was the only time we saw them. You can still get the idea since Uzi talks about them, but again, it would have been nice to see them. I'm sure the art exists, As far as I'm aware, there are large full drawings, but then panels of smaller ones are placed on top of them, or at least that's what it looks like. So it's possible there was a full art of the thing, but instead here in the comic, we get no cause, and part of Alice has been cut off of the page. Just down the hall, Bo is cutting into N, who is helping guide him. Alice calls, telling Bo Nori's kid is here, so bring more sedatives. Bo runs off, waving bye to N, and once he leaves, Tessa rips off the magnet. Tessa's walk and talk line is removed, instead being replaced with "let's get out of here." Then we cut to Bo now with Alice in the other room. Bo isn't told to go back to the others, so he stays for the entire time. We don't see Uzi's reaction to Tessa and N escaping, and we don't get more visual stuff like Alice replacing her finger with another. Uzi is asking about her mum and if she was cool, to which Alice says she's a lot like her, but without the yellow eyes. She then stabs Uzi and says her name was Nori, right? Sure thought imploding those folks was slick. But Uzi has no idea what she's going on about, and as Alice begins to try cut off her finger, Uzi uses the solver to try stop her. The page ends with a snip, as we see V's disgusted and freaked out face. Back to these escape artists, N wants to find V and Uzi, but Tessa shows him Earth on one of the computers. In the show, the part of Alice releasing the Sentinels is put before this, but here in the comic they do the Earth reveal all at once. For some reason N says, "the virus." Tessa didn't even say anything about the solver, and also, like I have said for the other issues, you do not need to put dialogue on every part. It really does take away from the impact of the moment, and also N's expression is gone in the comic. It really does take away from the impact of the moment when you add a random line in there. Also, N's expression is kind of removed from the comic. It's kind of there, but the framing is different, and just look at these, they don't have the same effect. Tessa explains the solver mutates and takes over a host, as the screen shows some planets, and then Nori on the camera. Some parts from the show are gone, such as Tessa sitting in a hallway, and showing the length between Earth and Copper 9. For Nori being shown, we don't get to see how she looks and her abilities, but we do know it's her because in the corner is her ID and name. Alice tries to find Tessa and N on the screen, but can't. Even Bo gets a noise for some reason. Alice says with the press of this button, they ain't our problem anymore. Door 3 begins to open as something walks out. The Sentinels on the camera is removed, and so is Uzi saying please and glitching out even more as she begins to use her solver. N is asking if Tessa can fix Uzi, and she tells him to pick the universe over one little drone before it's too late. Then, there's a sudden surprise attack with the Sentinel boot looping N, despite not showing a flash of light. It also ends up biting Tessa. The two both get quick lines, Tessa saying, "a wild dingo," and N trying to warn her, but he's stunned, so it cuts off his sentence. Again, do we need these lines? You can at least cut N's because he's boot looped. Also, the entire scene of Tessa and N's interaction with the Sentinel is removed, including it running away with N, Tessa's Jurassic Park moment, followed by it freaking out, turning red, and smashing itself against the wall. Inside the room, Alice and Bo are watching the chaos, and we see Uzi raise her hand with a yellow solver symbol. Meanwhile, there's a magnet in the air. The scenes of Bo noticing something, and then also him floating is removed. Instead, Alice has some added dialogue, then Uzi sits up, and the two look back, scared seeing her yellow eyes. Uzi opens a knoll behind them, which opens up the wall and shows that Sentinels are already standing there. One of Bo's legs is chomped, and Alice calls out, "Whoa, what?" as Uzi and V watch. The next page is V closing her eyes and the Sentinels are there as screams are in the background. I have not removed any pages or panels, this is genuinely the transition between the two pages. So Alice being boot looped and killed on the screen as the Sentinels come in, Bo then sacrificing himself to free V, V then trying to avoid being boot looped, V's reaction to Sin's voice, and the solver fixing Uzi are removed. Here in the comic, V is suddenly closing her eyes and trying to protect the what looks like awake Uzi. Look at this, she's closing her eyes and sitting up. Simply, the scene looks really bad. I also don't like removing Bo's sacrifice. I will at least give them credit for adding the part of the magnet being thrown in attempts to explain V freeing herself between the panels. But wasn't she also restrained, so how did she get past that? As a result, Bo's sacrifice freeing her got removed, and her reaction to hearing Sin is gone. Again, the whole scene is a big mess. It's hard to follow, it removes a good end for Alice and Bo, it removes V's reaction, and also, the Sentinel's ability and whole thing of being able to stun the drones is really underused in the comic. We only see it being used 2 times. One being the intro, and the second being N. N's looks strange and also removes the blue flash of light, so it looks weird. I don't know why they don't show the light. They know how to, as they did it for the intro and even did it for Uzi and V looking around. But for the other parts, it's gone. It ends up looking like they're just standing there. I'm skipping a bit here, but the lights are also removed from V's standoff. The glasses she uses to see and defend herself got removed too. Again, the Sentinel's main ability and way of fighting back against the drones is very underused in the comic. The null closes itself, and the Sentinels are suddenly gone. Uzi makes a noise and is now on the floor beside V, despite her previously sitting up on the bed with her eyes closed. Her laying on the bed not working and her body repairing itself, like in the show, is gone. Again, it all looks strange and feels like parts are missing. In another room, Tessa wakes up N and gets a whole panel of her posing. I like Tessa, she's great, but for how much the comic struggles with its pages and space, why is it taking up this much to show off Tessa? They don't have the space for this. V drops from above holding Uzi, and it's all in one panel, so V says Tessa's name so the audience can see she's talking to her. V putting her blade up to Tessa is gone because, again, it's one panel. Tessa holds her arm and says, well, at least the Sentinels can't boot loop her. Wow, it would have been great to see how that happened, but we don't need that. V argues back with Tessa, and when she tells N it's time to leave, Tessa tells N she hasn't told V yet. V asks what Tessa's told N, but is cut off as Uzi wakes up and jumps at N to hug him. Tessa says they need to leave before more show up, and then we see a red-eyed sentinel looking at footprints. The scene showing us the red-eyed sentinel and how it became that was removed, so here in the comic it just looks like a random red one, like it's a shiny Pokemon or something. We then see the group sitting above the Sentinels in their secret hiding spot as they walk past. Uzi and N talk with their screens, but the scene just doesn't hit. Most scenes have the same problem of not being presented well and losing a lot of the emotion and feel the show had. As a result, the scene just doesn't hit and feels poor. The Sentinels leave, the group comes down to find Dole holding the key bug, everyone says it's a trap. Uzi tries to use her solver, but before she can, V and N try stop her. But at the same time, Tessa shouts oi as she grabs the key bug. Why is Uzi trying to use the solver here? Wouldn't she be looking at Tessa picking it up? Also, the scene of V looking at N after he also tells Uzi to stop is taken out. So the moment between them with V looking at N knowing he knows something about the solver is gone. V casually walks to Tessa instead of her being on the lookout as they walk down the hallway. Sorry to Uzi and N fans, but the scene of them trying to walk down the hallway and hold hands and have a whole moment together is reduced to 2 panels. Kind of one panel really. That entire scene of them blushing and getting close is pretty much gone, and the dialogue between Uzi and Tessa is also just thrown into one panel. Uzi shouting at Tessa while they move close is removed, and so is V saying, ew. It's just poor and there's no emotion here. That's coming from me of all people. I sound dead every time I speak, but wow, this comic really is dead. I don't have much to say besides, this shit hard misses. I really question if readers actually care for these two. Doll gets up and says she will be leaving with her keybug, which gives a bruh.jpg. I don't want to make these videos. Do you lot enjoy this? Me going through these comics? I feel like I'm just saying the same stuff at this point. Tessa tells Doll she needs to stop doing that, and we get reminded that Doll speaks Russian, along with asking, how do you say keybug in Russian? Thankfully the Sentinels arrive and the boss music cues. Doll leaves, which, her leaving just looks bad. I think you can get the idea she leaves, but I don't think you get the idea she jumps down the elevator shaft to go deeper into the facility. Here it just looks like she goes bye and then disappears. Also, her opening the doors for the Sentinels is gone, so they kind of just appear randomly. The group makes their stand. The Sentinels looking around, and Tessa showing her blood is gone. The Tessa part makes sense because the earlier part was removed, so it wouldn't make sense for them to show it here. The Sentinels walking around and showing them off is probably removed because the comic just doesn't have enough pages and space to do that. Uzi uses her solver to open a hole in the elevator, but it freaks out and doesn't work properly, instead opening up a fleshy, horrific monster hole thing. N shouts, "Uzi, your hand," and cuts it off while saying sorry. Uzi doesn't even question him, instead N asks if she's okay, and it looks like she passes out as Sin takes over for a moment. V shouts for everyone to get into the elevator. N asks what's going on as he carries Uzi inside, while V shoots at the Sentinels. V tells them to go and begins fighting with the Sentinels as N screams, no, they need her. V gives a simple, nah, then tells Uzi she trusts her before shooting the wires, causing the elevator to fall as she salutes, and this issue finally ends. So yeah, that sucked. I said it before the issue came out, and I think I was right. Problem is, the sacrifice just doesn't hit because nobody cares about V. I didn't even think N cared before the final panels. Most of her development was removed, so her choices feel sudden, and it doesn't feel like she trusts Uzi. It feels like she's only doing this because she doesn't trust Tessa. Her development and moments are reduced to the final pages of issue 3. As you may have noticed, the standoff itself was also changed. Anything involving V with her glasses is removed, her trying to avoid being boot looped and fighting back is removed, and her catching the bullet is also removed. I can only guess, not enough space in the comic, so they didn't add it. Also, the reason V shoots the elevator cables is changed. In the show, she shoots them because a Sentinel is biting at the machinery, which begins pulling the elevator back up. Meanwhile, in the comic, that is removed, so she just does it. Obviously to let them go down, but the urgency of the scene is just gone. There's some stuff that I can't fully blame the comic for, but I still want to note it because it is a big issue with these comics. That being, Murder Drones is made for video. Through its movements, interactions, and especially its music. Eternal Dream is such a big and iconic thing for this episode, but due to this being a comic, it's completely removed, which sucks and takes away a lot. I guess in positives, at least they didn't randomly put the lyrics on a page. I do feel like we'll end up getting on-screen lyrics for Bite Me though.
I am tired of this dream. Will it ever end for me?
I actually thought the first half was okay. I liked getting to see Alice's design, Tessa looked great, and again, while I did have a few things to note, it was fine. But the second half was bad. Strange changes, moments removed, things being all over the place, and of course, moments not really hitting because nobody cares about the characters. So it has the same problem every issue has had, and it all just feels so much worse than the show. It feels like parts were cut out, and again, the same thing I have said for all of these. It really feels like it needs more pages. Note, this comic has extra pages. Can you imagine what the original version of this comic must have looked like, since it would have been missing 3 or more pages? The story part, again, it's fine until the halfway point where it just goes all over the place. Removing parts, trying to also keep some of those parts that they just removed. I assume they just don't have enough pages, but look at this. It has problems and becomes hard to follow. I wonder if comic-only readers understood this. I don't think the readers actually care about any of these characters, as their moments have all been removed, or are just bad. The art is back to normal, but it keeps some previous issues, that being missing mouths and weird expressions. The home issue was a nice idea, and it was alright to change up the art style, but that issue just had so many mistakes and looked bad at so many parts that it ended up drowning out the few good bits it had. For this issue, the art is fine and there isn't any huge mistakes. It's better than the previous issue, but it still just ends up being kind of meh. Very cool to see the different Alice design though. Still curious why they did that design, but it was a good thing and makes me wonder if the comic wanted to slightly change more characters. Again, I don't think it's a bad thing, and it could have been interesting to see some other slight changes for other characters, such as giving V her scarf from her concept art. It would have just been something to make the comic feel a little bit more fresh without ruining it. I did dislike how some scenes look in the comic versus the show. The show just looks better in every way. Speaking of art, it looks like the artist for the next issue has changed. It's this person, they have done work on these comics. For some reason they're doing the art for the next issue themselves. No word or big email about it like they did with the home issue. As a result, I assume it will look similar to the current one, and that artist and the normal one will be working together on the final issue. Also, the next issue has been pushed back to July. Yes, another silent pushback for the comic's release dates. Overall, I would rate the issue around a 4. I could see a bit more, I could see a bit less. The first half is alright, the art looks good, definitely better than the last issue. However, the moments suck and parts feel missing. Strange changes, reduced parts and removed pieces. The main thing is, we are 5 issues into this, yet I don't care about any of these characters. I don't see anything from them. Especially V, who is the main one here. The comics remove pretty much every moment of her that shows something besides Murder Machine. The only moments we get is her smiling at Lizzie and covering for Uzi and N at the end of issue 3. But those moments aren't done as well as the show, to where it's clear that she's even covering for them. There's a few moments of her in this issue, but like I said, the end can also just feel like her doing this because she doesn't trust Tessa. The Uzi, I trust you line has no weight to it. Parts because I don't care about the characters, parts because V still sucks and doesn't really give any glimpse at thinking maybe Uzi is good for N. Part of removing the tension of the scene and its build up, and even removing Bo's sacrifice, which as a result ends up lessening V's. This is where the stuff you built up needs to start paying off. Things are still being built up a bit, such as Tessa, but characters like V should be having a bit of payoff for this. But in the comic, it's all just nothing. I'm not sure if I would say it's better than the last issue. For the art, 100%. The previous issue had so many errors, but in the story and pacing for this one, again, in the second half, it sucks. You can also debate the previous issue had more of a chance to be big and grand because it's extra pages and different artists but failed to meet that hype. You can also argue the same for this episode because this is V's sacrifice, so it's meant to be this big grand thing, yet just doesn't hit. In short, I don't know if I would rank it the best, but I think I would rank it somewhere in, I don't know, top 3 or 4. I don't know if I'm getting used to these being bad or if they are getting better. I'm very sure my rankings for the previous issues have changed. After all the issues are out, I may do a video ranking all of them like I did for the episodes of the show. At that point I can make it its own video and focus on each of them and compare them side by side. But this issue, it's meh like usual. The next issue is sometime in July, going over my favourite episode of the show, and the issue after that is late July. Quick thoughts on the final comic. Episode 8 is so visual that I don't think the comic will be able to translate it well. Before we end the video, shout out to GMV Doodles. They're an artist who drew fan art of me. I'm surprised they actually did this, but thank you for that. I said do whatever you want, it's your drawing. I'm faceless, so you can kind of come up with whatever you want. They asked for an outfit, I gave them a dumb one, and they somehow made it look good. Go check out their social medias. If you have any interest, follow them, and they do actually make a lot of LVA themed art. So once again, thank you Grimm. Go check out their stuff, their social medias are on screen. I think that's everything, or most stuff. I'm sure I missed some stuff, so you can leave that in your comments. Tell me your thoughts on this video and the comic. As always, I hope you have and are having a good day. In case I don't see you again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.